It is one of the strangest paradoxes of our age. Human beings have never had so much information at their fingertips, yet we seem more confused than ever about what to believe. We can model the birth of galaxies with equations precise enough to predict the afterglow of the Big Bang, yet we can barely agree on what is true in our daily lives. We can program machines to recognize faces, voices, and languages across the world, yet we often fail to recognize the humanity in the stranger sitting next to us. And perhaps the greatest paradox of all is this. In an era where science explains more than it ever has, people are once again asking questions as old as philosophy itself. Among them, is the universe conscious? Now, before we rush to answers, pause with me. Because the question itself is remarkable. It tells us something about who we are. That we, tiny specks on a small planet, circling an ordinary star, dare to ask not only how the universe works, but whether the universe knows it is working. That we, arrangements of atoms forged in dead stars, have the audacity to wonder if the cosmos itself is in some way aware. This is not a new thought. Long before we split the atom or sent spacecraft to the edges of the solar system, ancient cultures looked up at the stars and asked whether they were alive. To the Egyptians, the heavens were gods watching over human affairs. To the Greeks, the cosmos was a living organism. The cosmos itself meaning order, beauty, and harmony. Hindu philosophy spoke of Brahman, the universal consciousness in which all beings participate. For millennia, we projected our own awareness onto the skies. But modern science shifted the story. Telescopes showed the stars were not gods, but distant suns. Physics revealed that matter follows laws, not intentions. Darwin showed that complexity can arise without design. Consciousness, it seemed, was not a property of the cosmos, it was a product of evolution on a tiny planet. Awareness was local, not universal. And yet the question refuses to go away, because consciousness, even here on Earth, remains one of science's greatest mysteries. We can describe the electrical firings of neurons, the chemistry of synapses, the algorithms of memory, but none of this yet explains how it feels to be alive. Why does matter, arranged in this particular way, generate experience? Why does the universe, at least in us, become aware of itself? And that is where the paradox returns. For if the universe produced consciousness here, could it not exist elsewhere? If awareness emerged from atoms on Earth, could it not, in some form, be a property of the universe itself? Could the cosmos be conscious, not like a human, not like an animal, but in some way we struggle even to imagine? It is a question that sits at the crossroads of science, philosophy, and imagination. And to explore it, we must travel far across the history of thought, the frontiers of neuroscience, the mysteries of physics, and the limits of language itself. But in doing so, we will also confront a mirror. For to ask whether the universe is conscious is also to ask whether we are living up to the consciousness we already have. So let us begin this journey, not with easy answers, but with curiosity sharpened by humility. Let us ask what consciousness really is, how it might emerge, and whether the universe itself, vast, cold, magnificent, could in some way be awake. And along the way, let us reflect on what it means for us, a species of stardust, to carry the one candle of awareness we know exists, and to decide how brightly it will burn. When we speak of consciousness, we tread on uncertain ground. It is the one phenomenon each of us knows directly, yet struggles to define. You and I both know what it feels like to be alive, to think, to feel, to imagine. But try to put that into words, and it slips away. Neuroscientists map brain regions, identify circuits, describe patterns of electrical activity, yet none of this explains why those patterns should give rise to experience. Why does the brain not merely process information, but feel it? This is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems are difficult, but solvable. How neurons communicate, how vision translates light into perception, how memory encodes and recalls. The hard problem is why any of it is accompanied by awareness at all. Why there is a self that experiences the data. Now, if consciousness is such a stubborn mystery here on Earth, what happens when we widen the lens to the cosmos? After all, the universe is the great arranger of matter. It forged atoms and stars, molecules in interstellar clouds, planets around suns, and here on Earth, it arranged matter into biology, biology into neurons, and neurons into minds. Consciousness, then, is not foreign to the universe. It is one of its products, which raises the question, is consciousness a rare accident, or is it in some way woven into the fabric of reality itself? Let me be clear. I'm not talking about the universe secretly whispering thoughts into our heads, or a cosmic being keeping score of our actions. That's theology, not physics. What I'm asking is subtler. Could awareness be a natural property of the universe, the way mass, charge, and spin are? Could it be that consciousness doesn't just emerge at some level of complexity, but that it has been here all along, in potential, waiting for matter to arrange itself in the right way to awaken it? This idea has a name: panpsychism. It suggests that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of matter itself, just as gravity is a feature of space and time. Under this view, electrons are not conscious in any human sense, but they might carry the most basic seed of what, in vast arrangements, grows into awareness. Panpsychism doesn't mean rocks have opinions or atoms dream about the weekend. It means that the building blocks of reality may include, at some fundamental level, the ingredients of experience. It sounds strange, but so did the idea, once, that time could bend or that space could expand. So did the notion that invisible germs cause disease or that invisible fields carry forces. Science has always forced us to expand our imagination, and the question of consciousness may demand the boldest expansion yet. But let's ground ourselves with history. For centuries, philosophers debated whether the universe was mechanistic or alive. Descartes saw the world as a great machine, matter in motion, with consciousness confined to the soul. Spinoza imagined God and nature as one, a unified substance where mind and matter were two aspects of the same thing. Leibniz imagined monads, fundamental units of existence, each with its own inner experience. And centuries later, physicists like Schrödinger and philosophers like Whitehead returned to the question. Perhaps matter and mind are not separate, but two sides of a deeper reality. Modern physics complicates the picture further. Quantum mechanics shows us that matter behaves not as fixed particles, but as probability waves, collapsing only when measured. Some interpret this as evidence that observation consciousness plays a role in reality itself. Most physicists are cautious here, pointing out that measurement need not involve a mind. But the very fact that the equations force us to ask the question reveals how intertwined mind and matter may be. And then there is the brain itself. Neuroscience has made enormous strides, yet it cannot escape the mystery of qualia, the redness of red, the bitterness of coffee, the felt experience of being alive. The brain is a universe of neurons, each firing with electrochemical signals. Yet out of that storm of activity arises you. Out of complexity emerges selfhood. Out of matter emerges meaning. Now pause here. If the universe produced this once on Earth through evolution, why not elsewhere? Why not many times? Why not as a principle rather than an accident? After all, the laws of physics are the same everywhere. The same chemistry that produced neurons here operates in other galaxies. The same forces that shaped our biosphere shape exoplanets around distant suns. If awareness emerged here, it may be one of the universe's ways of knowing itself, and that leads us to a startling reflection. Perhaps consciousness is not an anomaly in the universe. Perhaps it is the universe becoming aware of itself through us. That thought is not mystical, it is empirical. Every time you look up at the night sky and recognize the stars as suns, you are the universe reflecting upon its own architecture. Every time you solve an equation, write a poem, fall in love, or imagine a future, the cosmos is, through you, tasting its own potential. The atoms of your brain were born in ancient stars, and now, rearranged into you, they ponder stars. That is not metaphor, that is physics meeting philosophy. And yet this awareness is fragile. Unlike galaxies, which endure for billions of years, human consciousness is fleeting. Civilizations rise and fall. Languages vanish. Knowledge can be lost as quickly as it is gained. If the universe is conscious through us, then its self-awareness is not guaranteed. It depends on what we choose to do with our brief window of existence. So when we ask, is the universe conscious? Perhaps the answer is less important than the responsibility the question places upon us. For even if the cosmos is indifferent, we are not. Even if the universe itself is silent, we carry its only known voice, and that voice can choose to sing or to fall quiet. The question then is not only whether the universe is conscious, the question is whether we will live as though consciousness matters. If consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself, then what kind of mirror are we holding up? For a mirror does not merely reflect, it can distort, magnify, or diminish. When we build telescopes, we sharpen the reflection. When we wage wars, we crack the glass. Every human act, from writing a symphony to polluting a river, is the universe learning something about itself, sometimes profound, sometimes destructive, sometimes both at once. Let's look at history through this lens. When the first humans painted animals on cave walls, they were doing more than decoration. They were externalizing thought, recording imagination outside the brain, making consciousness durable. That was the universe discovering permanence. When the Sumerians invented writing, consciousness expanded into time, carrying memory beyond the lifespan of the speaker. That was the universe discovering continuity. When the Greeks began asking questions about nature, matter, and mind, they weren't simply speculating. They were drafting the first blueprints of scientific method. That was the universe discovering inquiry. And when Copernicus and Galileo displaced Earth from the center of the cosmos, they shifted consciousness itself. Humanity's self-image cracked, but in that fracture, we found clarity. That was the universe discovering humility. Every milestone of civilization can be seen this way, as consciousness evolving, deepening, widening its scope. The Enlightenment was consciousness learning to trust evidence. The Industrial Revolution was consciousness learning to harness energy, sometimes wisely, often recklessly. The digital age is consciousness extending its reach at light speed, linking minds across continents. These are not just technologies. They are expansions of awareness, ripples in the cosmic mirror. But here's the unsettling question. Is consciousness advancing or just accelerating? Because speed without direction is not progress, it's drift. We may be more connected, but are we more compassionate? We may be more informed, but are we wiser? We may be louder, but are we clearer? These are the calibration checks of the fifth dimension, the invisible field, where awareness either bends toward responsibility or collapses into noise. Science helps us here, not because it provides all the answers, but because it teaches us how to ask better questions. Take thermodynamics. It tells us that entropy, the tendency toward disorder, always increases in a closed system. Left alone, order decays. Structures crumble. Complexity dissolves. Yet life resists entropy, at least locally. It feeds on energy, builds order, generates structure. Consciousness is the ultimate example, a pocket of the universe where order not only persists, but reflects on itself. But here's the catch. Resisting entropy requires effort. Stars must burn fuel. Life must eat and grow. Civilizations must maintain balance. When the effort falters, entropy wins. Civilizations collapse when awareness drifts from responsibility. The Mayans built extraordinary cities, but deforestation and drought undermined them. Rome engineered aqueducts and roads, but corruption and overreach weakened its foundations. Entropy is patient. It does not need to conquer it, only needs us to stop tending the fire. The same is true for consciousness at the planetary scale. If we treat awareness as spectacle rather than responsibility, if we drown signal in noise, entropy will not need to destroy us. We will dissolve ourselves, but the opposite is also true. When we invest awareness with responsibility, we create resilience. The same thermodynamics that guarantees entropy also allows for open systems that adapt, reorganize, and endure. The Earth, bathed in sunlight, is one such system. Life thrives by channeling energy into complexity. Consciousness thrives when it channels knowledge into action. That is how order persists. That is how civilizations endure. Which brings us to today. We live in a moment of unprecedented awareness. We can see hurricanes forming before they strike. We can model pandemics before they spread. We can measure carbon in the air with exquisite precision. Never before has a civilization known so much about its vulnerabilities in real time. And never before has the gap between knowledge and action been so stark. This is our paradox. The universe has made us aware, but will we be responsible? The cosmos has given us consciousness, but will we use it wisely? We are the only known species capable of reflecting on its own fragility, the only known arrangement of atoms able to foresee its own risks. That knowledge is not a luxury, it is a mandate. It is the fifth dimension calling us to graduate from curiosity to stewardship. And stewardship, let's be clear, is not passive. It is not simply avoiding harm. It is active cultivation, the way a gardener shapes soil, the way an engineer monitors systems, the way a pilot manages fuel and trajectory. Stewardship is consciousness applied with discipline. Consider astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Every breath, every calorie, every drop of water is measured, recycled, conserved. Why? Because in orbit, fragility is obvious. There is no resupply if carelessness wins. But Earth, too, is a spacecraft, our only one. Its life support systems are vast but finite. Its resources are abundant but not infinite. Stewardship is not optional. It is survival. So when we ask, is the universe conscious? Perhaps the better question is, will the consciousness that exists ours prove worthy of the universe that birthed it? Will we, brief sparks of awareness, squander our chance at responsibility, or will we scatter meaning like stardust into the future? That is not a question for philosophers alone. It is a question for all of us citizens, scientists, leaders, neighbors. The universe has already answered whether consciousness can exist. The open question is whether consciousness can endure. When you step back and think about it, our species has been given a rare privilege to be alive at the very moment when the universe first became aware of itself through science. For billions of years, stars burned, galaxies collided, planets formed, and life evolved, yet none of it knew what it was. None of it could step outside itself and say, this is the cosmos, this is how it works, this is where we belong. Then, in the blink of cosmic time, a species of primates emerged with brains large enough to wonder. We learned to ask questions about the sky. We tracked the motions of the sun and moon, first for survival, then for curiosity. We built telescopes to extend our senses, equations to extend our logic, instruments to extend our reach. And for the first time in history, the universe could look in the mirror and recognize itself. That is what science is. Not a collection of facts, but the cosmos becoming conscious of its own laws. Every measurement, every equation, every discovery is the universe folding back on itself, awareness meeting origin. But if that is true, then awareness comes with responsibility. Consciousness is not free, it carries weight. To know is to be accountable. To understand is to be answerable. The more the universe awakens through us, the more it entrusts us to act wisely with that knowledge. Think about what we've learned just in the last century. We discovered nuclear energy, the power of stars, compressed into weapons and reactors. In that moment, the universe handed us both the possibility of abundant energy and the possibility of annihilation. Knowledge without conscience gave us mushroom clouds. Knowledge with responsibility could yet give us sustainable power for millennia. The fork in the road was not physics, it was ethics. Or take climate science. For most of history, humanity was too small to affect the planet. Our fires, our fields, our cities were tiny compared to oceans and forests. But in the last 2 centuries, we grew powerful enough to alter the atmosphere itself. We now know beyond reasonable doubt that the carbon we release warms the earth, melts the ice, fuels the storms. The question is not whether we understand. It is whether we will act on what we understand. Once again, knowledge without conscience leads to collapse. Knowledge with responsibility could lead to renewal. And then there is space exploration itself. When we built rockets, we gave ourselves the ability to leave Earth. We also gave ourselves the ability to destroy it. The same technology that lifts astronauts can deliver warheads. The question was never about the rocket, it was about us. Would we use it to scatter enrichment or scatter ashes? Would we aim it at the stars or at each other? History shows we are capable of both. We are clever enough to reach the moon, and foolish enough to stockpile thousands of weapons that could erase civilization in an afternoon. We are compassionate enough to invent vaccines that save millions, and careless enough to let preventable diseases return when mistrust spreads faster than truth. Consciousness is a gift, but also a gamble. Which brings us back to the great question, is the universe conscious? If by that we mean, does the cosmos itself think, plan, or feel the way we do? Probably not. Stars do not compose symphonies. Galaxies do not write poetry. But if by consciousness we mean the capacity to know, to reflect, to assign meaning, then yes, the universe is conscious through us. Not because we are separate from it, but because we are made of it. We are not passengers in the cosmos. We are the cosmos, awake and wondering. And here lies the mirror. If the universe is conscious through us, then our responsibility is vast. Every act of cruelty is the universe turning against itself. Every act of compassion is the universe nurturing itself. Every discovery is the cosmos learning its own potential. Every destruction is the cosmos dimming its own light. The stakes then could not be higher. For if we squander consciousness, if we collapse into chaos, if we fail to sustain civilization, then the universe will lose its only known voice. The stars will go on burning, the galaxies will go on spinning, but awareness will go silent. And silence in a universe capable of song is tragedy. So the question is not whether the universe is conscious. The question is whether we will honor the consciousness we embody. And this is where the space race becomes more than history. It becomes prophecy. Because in that brief, fevered competition of the 20th century, we glimpsed what is possible when awareness meets ambition and ambition bends toward responsibility. We reached for the moon not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And in reaching outward, we discovered inward. We saw Earth whole, for the first time a fragile orb against the void, borderless, finite, beautiful. That was the universe reminding itself what truly matters. Now, in this century, the race is not between nations, but between futures, between collapse and renewal, between silence and song, between a universe that remains awake through us and a universe that drifts back into unconsciousness. The universe has done its part. It has given us stardust, time, brains, and curiosity. The rest is up to us. Think for a moment about what it means that we can even have this conversation. You are listening to words carried by invisible signals, encoded as digital pulses, transmitted through machines powered by electricity harnessed from ancient sunlight. And those words are about galaxies, stars, atoms, and consciousness itself. That is extraordinary. That is the universe not only becoming aware of itself, but communicating that awareness across space and time. Every technology we take for granted today, electricity, medicine, communication, transportation, represents consciousness extended. It is awareness multiplied, memory externalized, thought projected into tools. The printing press turned human consciousness into a replicating force. The internet turned it into a network. Artificial intelligence now threatens to amplify it even further, forcing us to ask, what happens when machines begin to mirror our thought? Will they extend consciousness or dilute it? Will they sharpen our mirror of the cosmos or fracture it into noise? And here again, the answer depends not on technology, but on responsibility. AI is not destiny. It is a tool. It can analyze data that might cure diseases design materials, and reveal cosmic patterns we cannot see ourselves. But it can also automate biases, magnify misinformation, and accelerate destruction. The fork in the road is not in the code, it is in us. This has always been true. Fire could warm or burn. The wheel could carry grain or armies. The atom could light cities or erase them. Tools are amplifiers of intent. Consciousness is the source. Responsibility is the filter. Without the filter, amplification becomes danger. With it, amplification becomes civilization. Now, let's zoom outward again. Think about how stars live and die. For billions of years, they burn hydrogen into helium into heavier elements. When they die, they scatter those elements into space. Every atom of iron in your blood, every atom of calcium in your bones, every atom of oxygen in your lungs was forged in a star's death. We are stardust, yes. But more than that, we are stardust with memory, stardust with imagination, stardust capable of choice. That last quality is the difference. Stars scatter matter. We scatter meaning. Stars enrich galaxies with elements. We can enrich the future with wisdom or impoverish it with folly. The cosmos gave us the rarest of gifts, the ability to decide. Civilizations of the past remind us how fragile this gift is. The Library of Alexandria once held centuries of accumulated knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, a single fire, and much of that awareness was lost. Mayan astronomers tracked the heavens with precision, but drought and deforestation led to collapse. Rome engineered aqueducts, but could not engineer trust. When awareness drifts from responsibility, consciousness falters. And when it falters long enough, civilizations dissolve back into entropy. That is the cosmic danger for us now. We are the most connected, most knowledgeable civilization in history, but we are also distracted, fragmented, divided. Our awareness is vast, but often scattered, dissipated in triviality. If we cannot bend that awareness into responsibility, then we risk becoming not the universe's awakening, but its failed experiment. And yet, I do not believe collapse is inevitable. Why? Because we have examples of resilience. Humanity has faced crises before and adapted. We survived ice ages with fire and cooperation. We survived plagues with medicine and science. We survived wars by building institutions to restrain them. We stumble often, but we learn. The arc of consciousness is not smooth, but it bends. And now, perhaps more than ever, the universe is giving us a chance to prove ourselves worthy. We can measure our impact on the climate. We can model pandemics before they spread. We can observe galaxies billions of light years away. The universe has given us sight. The question is whether we will use it to see clearly or close our eyes and drift. Because here's the truth. We are the only known pocket of the universe where awareness has bloomed. If we squander it, the cosmos loses its voice. But if we nurture it, then even if consciousness exists elsewhere, we will have joined the cosmic chorus. And if we are alone, then our voice is all the more precious. So when we ask, is the universe conscious? Perhaps we should also ask, what kind of consciousness will we be? Will we be a civilization remembered for reaching the stars or for failing to care for the ground beneath our feet? Will we be the awareness that scattered enrichment or the awareness that scattered ashes? Will we be the stardust that chose responsibility or the stardust that squandered it? The universe has written the opening chapters. The ending is up to us. When Voyager 1 turned its camera back toward Earth in 1990, it captured what Carl Sagan later called the pale blue dot, a single pixel, a fleck of light suspended in a sunbeam. And in that pixel, every king, every soldier, every poet, every scientist, every lover, every parent, every child that has ever lived, that photograph was more than an image. It was the cosmos holding up a mirror to its own fragility. That pale dot is not just our home, it is our consciousness. The only known place where awareness has flowered into reflection, into meaning, into responsibility. And yet, look at how we treat it. We speak of conquest as though Earth were infinite. We burn through fossil fuels as though the atmosphere were invulnerable. We draw lines on maps as though borders mattered more than biospheres. We build weapons capable of erasing entire cities as though our survival were optional. The paradox of our age is that we have the technology to reach other worlds, but we are still struggling to manage this one. If the universe is conscious through us, then what kind of consciousness are we displaying? Are we a fleeting dream, here and gone, leaving nothing but silence? Or are we a maturing awareness, ready to shoulder responsibility and scatter meaning into the future? History tells us civilizations can collapse, but it also tells us collapse is not inevitable. The same awareness that destroys can also rebuild. After the devastation of World War II, nations forged institutions to prevent another global catastrophe. After centuries of slavery and inequality, movements for justice reshaped laws and norms. After pandemics and famines, science and cooperation rebuilt health and stability. Awareness alone is not enough, but awareness curved into responsibility changes the arc of history. The universe itself reflects this truth. Stars die, yes, but in dying, they scatter the elements for new worlds. Galaxies collide, but in colliding, they seed new formations. Even black holes, once thought to be eternal prisons, evaporate slowly, scattering their energy back into space. The universe survives not by avoiding endings, but by transforming them into beginnings. Consciousness, too, can survive collapse if it chooses to transform. That brings us to the space race, one of the most revealing chapters of human history. At its height, it was fueled by rivalry, fear, and power. Two superpowers competing not for curiosity's sake, but for supremacy. And yet, out of that rivalry came a perspective that transcended rivalry itself. The sight of Earth from space, the understanding of our fragility, the realization that in the vast darkness, borders vanish. And humanity is one crew aboard one ship. That was the fifth dimension at work awareness, bending into responsibility. Apollo did not just plant flags, it planted perspective. And that perspective still speaks. Earth is small, life is rare, awareness is fragile, responsibility is non-negotiable. Now, half a century later, the stakes are even higher. The climate clock is ticking. Technologies advance faster than our ethics. Misinformation spreads faster than truth. Nuclear weapons remain on alert. If we fail now, the consequence is not just the collapse of a civilization, but the silencing of the only known consciousness in the universe. But if we succeed, if we link awareness to responsibility, knowledge to action, then we can scatter enrichment across centuries. We can become a civilization worthy of its stardust. We can become the consciousness of the cosmos, not fleeting, but enduring. So perhaps the universe is asking us a question through our own awareness. Now that you know, what will you do? Because consciousness is not simply the ability to think. It is the responsibility to choose. Imagine what lies ahead. Humanity stands at a crossroads where our consciousness is extending beyond Earth itself. Already, rovers crawl across the dusty plains of Mars. Telescopes orbit the Earth, peering into galaxies that existed before our sun was born. Probes sail through interstellar space, carrying golden records etched with music, greetings, and the sounds of our world. These are not just machines. They are extensions of our awareness, emissaries of our curiosity, ambassadors of our consciousness to the cosmos. Mars is no longer just a dream. Plans are drawn, rockets are tested, habitats are designed. Some imagine a colony on the red planet, a second home for humanity. But let us be clear, Mars is not a backup Earth. It is a laboratory of perspective. To settle Mars is not to escape responsibility for Earth, but to deepen it. For if we cannot care for one biosphere, we will not care for two. If we bring to Mars the same short-sightedness that threatens Earth, then the red planet will inherit our folly, not our wisdom. The same applies to artificial intelligence. Already, algorithms learn, adapt, and generate. Some see in this the beginning of machine consciousness. Perhaps someday AI will become a new kind of awareness, a digital extension of the universe's reflection on itself. But even if that happens, the question remains, what values will we embed in it? What responsibilities will we teach it? If AI inherits only our cleverness and not our conscience, then it will magnify our chaos, not our wisdom. And beyond Mars, beyond AI, we imagine interstellar journeys, generation ships crossing the gulfs between stars, Dyson spheres harnessing the power of suns, civilizations spanning galaxies. These visions stretch the imagination, but they are not fantasies. They are possibilities, seated in physics and engineering, nurtured by ambition. But again, the question is not whether we can, it is whether we should, and if so, how. Will we expand consciousness responsibly, or will we spread folly at the speed of light? The Kardashev scale imagines civilizations by their energy use: planetary, stellar, galactic. Humanity is not even type I. We have not yet mastered our own planet. But perhaps there is another scale, one more important, a scale of responsibility. A type I civilization is one that sustains its planet. A type 2 is one that sustains its star system. A type 3 is one that sustains its galaxy. Energy without responsibility is catastrophe. Responsibility without energy is stagnation. The true measure of advancement is the union of both. So here we are, on the edge of possibility. The universe has given us everything: stardust for bones, sunlight for energy, time to learn, and the one gift rarer than all others, awareness. The question is whether we will scatter enrichment or ashes, whether we will be remembered as a spark that flickered and died, or as the species that ignited consciousness across the cosmos. And here, at last, we return to our paradox. Is the universe actually conscious? If by that we mean, does it think or feel? Perhaps not. But if by that we mean, can it know itself, reflect upon itself, and assign meaning to itself, then yes, here and now, through us, it is. We are the voice of the cosmos, fragile yet profound. The universe has awakened in us. The next move is ours. The story of humanity has always been a story of mirrors. At first, the sky was our mirror. We saw gods in the constellations, destinies in the stars. Later, the microscope became our mirror, showing us that vast empires of life existed in a single drop of water. Then the telescope widened the mirror again, revealing galaxies beyond counting, each a swarm of suns. And now, consciousness itself has become the mirror, forcing us to ask, what kind of awareness are we? What kind of reflection do we give back to the cosmos that created us? The space race was a turning point in that reflection. On the surface, it was a contest of nations. Rockets rising from deserts and swamps, astronauts hailed as heroes, missions tracked on black and white television. But underneath, it was something deeper. It was humanity's rehearsal for cosmic adulthood. It showed us that when fear and rivalry push us to reach higher, we can achieve the impossible. But more importantly, it revealed something unexpected. The most important discovery of space exploration was not the moon. It was Earth. Those photographs, Earthrise, the blue marble, the pale blue dot, reshaped our consciousness. They showed us that borders are illusions, that fragility is truth, that unity is survival. They showed us that consciousness must scale, from the tribe to the species, from the now to the future, from the local to the cosmic. That was the fifth dimension revealed, awareness bent into responsibility. But the question remains, will we listen? We live in a century where the alarms are clear. Climate change is no longer a projection, it is a reality. Nuclear weapons, though fewer than during the Cold War, still hover like shadows over every city. Inequality grows, trust frays, ecosystems strain. These are not mysteries, they are measurements. The telemetry of our planet is blinking red. The cockpit alarms are sounding. The question is whether the crew us will respond. The universe is watching through us, waiting for an answer. Not because it has eyes or ears, but because we are its eyes and ears. If we squander this moment, if we choose denial over responsibility, then the universe loses its only known chance at self-awareness. But if we rise to the occasion, if we bend our awareness into action, then consciousness will not end here. It will scatter outward, enriching the future, echoing across worlds yet unborn. So is the universe actually conscious? The answer is standing in front of every mirror you've ever looked into. The answer is in every poem, every equation, every act of compassion, every reckless mistake, every bold experiment, every moment of wonder. The answer is us. The universe is conscious because we are conscious. The cosmos is aware because we are aware. And whether that awareness endures depends on the choices we make together. This is the true legacy of the space age. Not rockets or flags, but perspective. A reminder that we are one species on one planet, bound together by physics, biology, and destiny. A reminder that consciousness is rare, fragile, and precious. A reminder that meaning is not given to us, it is made by us. And so the final question is not whether the universe is conscious, but whether we will live as though consciousness matters. Whether we will scatter enrichment or ashes, whether we will choose silence or song, whether we will let awareness fade or carry it into the stars. The universe has already given us everything we need: stardust for our bodies, curiosity for our minds, responsibility for our choices. The rest is up to us. May we choose wisely. May we choose meaning. May we choose to keep the universe awake. Think of how many times humanity has stood at thresholds before. The moment when fire was first controlled, the moment when the wheel carried us farther than our feet, the moment when ships crossed oceans, or when engines replaced horses, or when radio waves first carried voices across continents. Each threshold was not just about the tool, it was about what kind of consciousness we brought to it. Fire can cook a meal or burn a village. Ships can carry explorers or conquerors. Radio can spread truth or propaganda. Every technology has been a mirror of our intent. Today, we face thresholds that dwarf those of the past. Artificial intelligence capable of learning faster than we do. Genetic engineering able to rewrite the very code of life. Space exploration poised to make us a multi-planetary species. Each of these thresholds is a test, not of cleverness, but of conscience. For cleverness builds tools. Conscience decides how to use them. Consciousness without responsibility is drift. Consciousness with responsibility is direction. The universe itself seems to remind us of this law. Stars burn until their fuel runs out, but not all stars die the same way. Some collapse violently, scattering heavy elements across galaxies. Others fade quietly, cooling into embers. The difference is not in the laws of physics, but in the balance of forces within. In the same way, civilizations collapse, not because collapse is inevitable, but because balance is lost. Rome did not fall because time demanded it. It fell because corruption, overreach, and division hollowed its resilience. The Mayans did not vanish because fate decreed it. They collapsed because deforestation and drought-strained systems passed their breaking point. The same laws that allow stars to shine and civilizations to thrive also permit their failure. But failure is not the whole story. Out of collapse comes renewal. The ashes of stars become planets. The ruins of empires seed new cultures. Entropy is real, but so is emergence. The question is whether we will allow collapse to strip us bare, or whether we will learn to transform endings into beginnings. This is why consciousness matters. Consciousness is the lever that can bend endings into transformations. It is what allows us to recognize patterns, foresee consequences, adjust trajectories. It is the one property of the universe we know that can resist blind drift. And perhaps this is what makes the question, is the universe actually conscious? So powerful, because whether or not galaxies themselves are aware, we are. Whether or not the cosmos thinks, we do. And that means the weight of cosmic responsibility rests on us. Now think of the space race again. It began with rivalry, fear, and competition. But from it came one of the most unifying perspectives ever captured. Earth, whole, fragile, finite, suspended in darkness. That was not just a photograph, it was a revelation. It told us that survival is shared. That responsibility is collective. That consciousness must scale to the species, not shrink to the tribe. That is the real fifth dimension, the field we generate when awareness bends into responsibility. And it is already around us. Every time a scientist shares data openly, every time a community conserves resources for the next generation, every time nations collaborate on a space station instead of fighting wars, the fifth dimension brightens. It is not mystical, it is practical. It is the invisible architecture of survival. But like gravity, it weakens when neglected. Cynicism erodes it. Division fractures it. Denial dims it. The alarms are sounding in climate, in nuclear arsenals, in inequality, in mistrust of truth itself. The fifth dimension flickers. The question is whether we will strengthen it in time. And here is where the universe, in a poetic way, seems to test us. It has scattered stardust into us, arranged neurons into awareness, given us the ability to ask questions of infinity itself. And now it asks one of us, now that you know, what will you do? Will we be the consciousness that squandered itself in distraction, or the consciousness that scattered meaning into the future? Will we be the stardust that burned briefly and vanished, or the stardust that carried awareness across worlds? Will we be silence, or will we be song? The choice is ours, and the cosmos is waiting. So when we ask, is the universe actually conscious? We must understand that the answer is not out there, waiting to be delivered by some distant galaxy or hidden particle. The answer is already here, in us. For in the silence of the cosmos, it is our laughter that breaks through. In the coldness of space, it is our compassion that warms. In the darkness between stars, it is our awareness that shines. The space race proved what was possible when ambition met discipline. But it also revealed something deeper, that the greatest discovery was not the moon, but the Earth itself, fragile, finite, and profoundly beautiful, hanging in the blackness like a jewel. That was the cosmos turning its own gaze inward. That was the universe awakening to its fragility. And now the baton has passed to us. What we do in this century will echo for millennia, perhaps forever. We hold in our hands the power to silence consciousness or to scatter it across the stars, to burn out like a spark or to become a flame that carries meaning into the cosmic dark. This is our pale blue dot moment, stretched across generations. It is our chance to decide what kind of awareness we will be. One that consumes, or one that sustains, one that divides, or one that unifies, one that drifts, or one that steers. The universe has already given us its greatest gift, the ability to know, to reflect, to choose. What remains is whether we will prove worthy of that gift. So let us choose wisely. Let us be the stewards who understood that responsibility is not a burden but a privilege. Let us be the generation that recognized that consciousness is not for comfort but for action. Let us scatter enrichment instead of ashes, legacy instead of regret, meaning instead of silence. And one day, if another civilization, somewhere across the galaxies, looks back at us, may they see not only that we existed, but that we awakened, that we chose to keep the universe alive through us, that we lived as though consciousness mattered. Infinity may one day end. Stars may fade, galaxies may drift, time itself may dissolve. But meaning does not need eternity. Meaning needs us, here, now. The cosmos is awake, the universe is conscious. Because we are. Now the question is, what will we do with that awareness?